I do apologize for the delay in getting this video too. I had to cut it down a little bit. I was just too long, I guess. It was part of the exporting issue. But this is Coda's video. We're starting with some public access work. Well, not really access work, pardon me, but working out in public to kind of get him through some of his unnerviness. One of the big things about this video is I'm just reassuring him when he pays attention to me and also not telling him he's going to be okay. So the best way I can work with him is showing him that if he's going to sit, if he's leash walking, whatever he's doing, he still has to do it even when he's scared. And sometimes we're going to do nothing. And if he makes a good choice, like looking back at me or ignoring anything that might scare him, he'll get rewarded. I transitioned to some leash walking in the store. Now, heel is the formal command that means walk with you, and when walking with you, he should stay by your side. So if at any point he's in a heel, he isn't in line with you, basically his front leg in line with yours, you can mark it with a no and correct that unwanted behavior. If he's walking with you appropriately, we can reward him with food, pets, or even praise. So if I turn around like I did here in the video, he needs to follow suit. If at any point I want him to slow down, I'm going to slow down, and if he doesn't stay in line, then of course I'll hold him accountable. And in this part of the video, I'm trying to get him used to sitting whenever I stop. It's just a little kind of quality of life thing to where especially if you do take him out in public, you want to look at something on a shelf, or if you stop to talk to someone, that he just defaults to sitting down rather than wandering around or hiding behind you or anything like that. So when he's leash walking, again, make sure it's a loose leash until you need him to do something. At that part of the video, I asked him to sit down formally because there was a person walking by and he didn't do it, so I marked it no and corrected his behavior, not once, but twice. We'll talk about sits a little later in the video, but the idea is simply put, just like healing, if he doesn't sit when he's told to, we'll mark it no, correct the behavior, and get him in a position. So, when it comes to healing, quite simply put, heal is turned on as soon as you say the word, and it's turned off as soon as you give him something else to do. So, if anything in between, you shouldn't have to be reminding him a bunch on what to do. He should make the right choices, like even offering a sit right there. I included this little video of him just doing some sits by some of the chicks in the store. Again, I try to do as much as I could all around, but Track Supply is always an easy, quick place to stop by, so we always made trips there. Again, having things like the bird distractions, the people going through, carts running around, it's honestly a pretty busy little store. But when you take them out, you might want to start by taking them to public parks or on long walks to a neighborhood, because getting him too close quarters too quick when he doesn't know if you have his back or not might make him stress out even more than he does when you take him to an open space, a place where he can get away. Because we want to show him that he has his rules to follow, but also we're not going to put too much pressure on him too quickly as far as him becoming social. And again, when it comes to the training commands, make sure you always follow through with them. We're going to go a lot more over, your place, sits, and downs, which are all great skills too. But when out in public, just make sure that you are taking his attention off of that stuff without coddling him. With a kid, a human child, we tell him everything's going to be okay. The more you do things like that with the dog, the more they know something's wrong. The way I work with him when he's stressed is I just keep walking, or I will maybe subconsciously go, okay, hey, that kid over there might be being too loud, let's walk in the other direction. But I never react to his fears and like he runs away from a cart, so I'm going to run away from the cart. I might even make him hold a sit stay while that cart passes by. Now we're going to move on to doing some obedient stuff. First in this video is going to be downstay. Now this is something I took a lot of footage out of to make room, so I do have more downplay footage. If you do need help with the downstay, there's some troubleshooting and corrections. I just cut this down to a smaller piece that encompasses, everything that we have to do with down. Down is a stay. I do implied stays, meaning when I tell him down, he needs to stay down till I tell him to get up. Right there in the video, as I was explaining things, he got up from a down, so I marked it with a no and reminded him to lay down. At any point in training, he breaks a down stay. You want to mark it no, give him that leash pop like you saw right there, and remind him what he's doing. Remember the order of operations. We ask him once to down. If he does it, sure, you can have a cookie now and then. If he doesn't down, or if he gets up at any point, we'll mark it no, give him a leash correction, which is that little pop, and then tell him down again. If that doesn't work, the last step is we'll mark it no again, and we'll make him down. So we'll do some leash pressure in the downwards direction while pointing downwards. Think of it like baseball, 3 strikes are out. First strike, he doesn't down verbally. Second one is no correcting him, so reminding him essentially and giving him a consequence. And the third is just making him do it. Now, when it comes to a downstay or a sit stay, we want to take them back roughly where they started. Like in this video, I'm obviously training in a smaller space, but if he was in the living room and he ran to the kitchen, I'm not going to down him in the kitchen. Another sidebar there. In that moment, he kept making the same mistake, so I upped my consequence. Instead of correcting him really, really hard, I gave him multiple light pops of the collar, so 3 or 4 pops. When it comes to consequences, his actions gauge if it's a consequence or not how you. Meaning that if you correct a dog and he makes a mistake, and then he makes a mistake, and he makes a mistake, and you give him the same consequence every time, and it's not changing behavior, you're not really correcting anything. If anything, you might just make the problem worse. Corrections should mitigate behavior. I'm not saying one time scared straight, but if you are seeing improvement of mistakes, like right here, he's held it down, stay a lot better after that last consequence, that shows that correction worked. And even if we want to use a lighter consequence, we have to do what works for the dog. And on the same note, not that I believe you do this, we don't overcorrect. We don't just start off by giving a dog a haymaker. Like, we don't just slam on that collar just because he didn't listen to obedience. Start light. Start where you almost don't even think the consequence is going to work. But if he keeps making a mistake, amp up your consequence. And on the flip side, like you saw there, he's holding his down stay, for a good amount of time. Give him food reward. Show him he did a good job. You can pet and praise too, but food reward between his legs is probably the best way to reward a downstay. Now keep in mind, this will get a little repetitive as I talk for sit stays and play stays, but the concept though that has to be there is that no and consequence. Now I explained it a little bit already, but do not forget, no plus pop of the leash is how consequences work. Next, we're going to go over here a little bit of sit stay stuff, just like with downstays. Sit means sit, which means you stay there until I release you. If at any point I say the word free, that is the release word for these commands. If he does not hear the word free or another command, like I made him go to place there, you see nip my hand a little bit on that food intake, but if I don't say free or another command, he has to stay there. Remember, implied stays mean I don't have to tell him stay. However, I got to tell him when it's okay to get up. Like right there, I did a recall as well. So when it comes to training, you can use other commands. It doesn't have to be free, but remember, you have to release them. Now, in this part of the video here is where I start working on jumping a little bit. I kind of made a joke in one of our last conversations that he's getting really excited with me, so we started jumping. So I wanted to work on the behavior. And then since, I made this video after the fact, I know that how he is with your sister, just like I'm doing in this video, you can hype him up and get him to a point where he jumps. But the big thing is mark it, know, and correct if he makes contact. Don't pet him when he jumps up on you. No more hugs or anything like that. And then like right there, if he offers to sit instead, love on him the same way. As soon as he makes a mistake, I switch back to no and correction. So you can have fun with him, you can love on him, but if there's something you don't like, no one can reinforce that behavior. So no one should pet him for jumping or reward him by any other means. Another displacement behavior besides waiting for him to sit is making him go to place, almost like a timeout until he controls himself. You see, though, I went from hyperactivity back down to a sit stay and back to a free and back to a place. I'm just throwing, a bunch of different commands at him and having him enjoy his time. Now we're going to do some recalls outside. I'm going to speed through most of this and put it on like 2 or 3 times speed because it's a long part of the video. But the idea behind recalls is that when he's at a distance, you call him over to you with coda come or coda here. Either way will work. He runs back to you, offers a sit, and then you release him. At any point he does not come back to you, he's wearing a long line in this video, and I'm going to hold it for a bit because the weeds got a little long outside. But the idea is he has a 30-foot line on him, so that way if at any point he makes a mistake, you can hold him accountable. You can correct him for his bad behavior. We do that by, again, marking it no, giving a little tug towards you, and then waiting till he gets back. Remember, we reward for recalls every time he comes back and goes into a sit. We want to show him, when I say come or here, you run back to me and sit down, and I will give you food, and then I will tell you free. If he takes off before you free him, if he doesn't come back to you, remember, mark it no, correct his problem, get him back where he should be. I included a little bit more sit-stay stuff outside so I can get some longer distance because his sit-stays and play-stay, he could do a decent amount of distance. Now the way that works is quite simply, I put him into a sit and I walk further and further away. I make sure if he makes a mistake that I'll mark it no, I'll go grab him and take him back to where he started. So again, this is going to probably be sped up a little bit just to show you that he goes pretty good for a sit-stay even though I walk away from him. And you can't really see him in this part of the video, but I've done a lot of training out here with the birds, the chickens, ducks, the turkey, all kind of running around him while he does his thing. I also realized as I had to kind of cut down video that you didn't really get much about place. Place is that stay on the bed. Now, you've seen me do it on a soft bed as well as this elevated bed. The idea is simply you give the word place and he has to get over there. If he doesn't go to the bed when he's supposed to, we mark it no and correct him. And he can stay on place as long as we need.